it's so difficult to attract students, to make plans, to attract researchers, because if someone says, "Can I come in September?" I can't even tell them where we'll be. Like, or the last year, I haven't been able to tell them where to be. And we get emails every week from people saying, "Are you doing short courses? I thought you were doing a short course." And every week we have to say, "No, we're not." And it shows the interest is there. But yeah, our work is just it's difficult. It's very difficult. Because it all feels at times a little bit pointless. We're working on organising this collection, making it usable, opening it up to people, but it's hard to continue investing in that when are people going to be able to access it without someone there to let them into the building? Come to our lab, use it while you still can. If you want to come, email us. You can come and look at the skeletons. Do it while you can.
Talk about it, shout about it, just make sure that everybody knows this is exactly what irritates the management to no end, okay? Because they want to keep the thing, rather secretive, and I think it's absolutely important that everybody knows that a scandal really is currently in place in our university.
Hello and welcome back to Watching Brief for the week of the 12th of May 2025. I'm joined as ever by my co-host, Mr. Andy Brockman. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm good, thank you. It's a lovely sunny afternoon here in southeast London, and I dare say we're going to be talking about hosepipe bans and droughts before too much longer.
Unfortunately, yes. It's been a very dry spring for those of you at home who don't know. So it's going to be an interesting summer. But regardless of talking about the weather and whatever else may be coming down the pipeline, see what I did there. Today we have an interview for you. Yesterday, Andy recorded a chat with Umberto and Stephanie at Sheffield University about the ongoing and current struggles that the Zooarchaeological department and collection are having to navigate. Is there anything that you want to say about this before we crack on?
Only that, as you'll hear in the interview, this is a story that we've been covering for a number of years now, ever since the archaeology department, as it then was at Sheffield, was first threatened with closure. That you published this morning, our back catalogue, if you like, of interviews and stories that we've done about Sheffield, and it's really just emblematic of the state of archaeology in higher education in the UK. But I think also, as people listen to the interviews will hear, it's also about the situation that's facing colleagues across the sector as higher education struggles with its funding issues.
Yeah. Well, here is what they had to say.
Well, hello and welcome to the Watching Brief. Old friend of the show, Professor Umberto Arborella of Sheffield University, the Professor of Zooarchaeology at Sheffield. And his colleague sitting to his left is Stephanie Barron, who is a technical specialist in bioarchaeology at the Zooarchaeology lab at Sheffield, and you'll see why she's joining us shortly. But as a bit of background, people who followed the Watching Brief for a while and have followed the Sheffield story for a while will be aware that for a number of years now we've covered the way that the management at the University of Sheffield have slowly chipped away at the archaeology provision. What was, 10 years ago, a world famous and world renowned department. The last time we spoke to Umberto was at the beginning of the academic year, when it was the first year, in fact, when the archaeology department had ceased to exist, and certain of its courses and its resources, including the Zooarchaeology lab, which we're talking about today, have been spread across the rest of the university, with courses coming under other departments, other department heads. We're now towards the latter end of the first year, really, of archaeology at Sheffield being a postgraduate enterprise rather than having an undergraduate department to back it up. And we are talking this afternoon because of a Facebook post which was posted a short while ago by the Zooarchaeology Lab on their Facebook account, basically asking for other people in the archaeology sector to support them in various issues that they're having with the university. It includes, for example, being required to cancel short courses that were run particularly with a community focus, but the university claimed they weren't making enough money. They've suggested that there have been issues around attracting external grants and donations. They've talked about facility fees being imposed on people wanting to use the Zooarchaeology Lab and its reference collection and so on, which again puts off potential users, and includes actually staff and students. And I thought I'd like to explore that maybe a little bit more. Amongst other things, they've also been told to move buildings to what they say is a building which has no access for people with disabilities and movement issues, and is basically not fit for purpose. And the most telling thing, and the reason Stefan has joined us, is that their technical team in zooarchaeology and human osteology is in the process of being made redundant. And so I'd like to explore a little bit of the implications of that, both for the for what Sheffield is able to offer its students and its users, because it also acts as a consultancy, when you've no longer got technical support staff on the staff, but also most importantly as well in terms of the personal impact on those concerned. But I mean, I'll start by asking you, Umberto, when the archaeology department was closed, the university said it wanted to maintain itself as a centre of excellence. Zooarchaeology, osteoarchaeology was seen, human osteology was seen as one of those centres of excellence, that it could make an academic contribution. It could also attract students, and obviously we're now talking about postgrads, master's students and PhDs. But this list of problems seems to be suggesting that promise may be falling very short of the reality. How do you feel about what was promised as opposed to what's now being delivered, what you're now being asked to deliver?
Hi, Andy. First of all, thank you very much for having us once again on your program. Always a great pleasure to talk to you. And thanks also for giving us a voice, considering that this voice is not much heard within the university, which forces us basically to go externally. And that's the reason when we talk to the press, and because if there was constructive conversation within the university, we may not need to do that. Yes, absolutely. I think you pointed out something extremely important. As you will remember, when there was the notification we had of the closure of our department, then we put together a very strong campaign that you helped us to publicize, in which we highlighted the absurdity and what we called the cultural vandalism of the closure of our department. And as a consequence of this very strong campaign, which became very well known internationally, we collected for more than 48,000 signatures to support our department. Just to mention something, the Vice Chancellor received almost 2,000 letters of protest about this. It was so of an immense scale. And then the response eventually, or the management, was that they started being more cautious about their language and their approach. And although the department was still closed, as you mentioned, they promised that they regarded our collections as very important, as indeed they are, because they're regarded as probably the best academic collections in the country, and certainly some of the best in the world. And so much money and time and investment has been put on them. And they said, yes, we value them, we'll support them, we'll preserve them. I mean, I always suspected that, knowing the kind of people we were dealing with, that we shouldn't be, we shouldn't feel too comfortable with this reassurance. And unfortunately, what has happened afterwards has demonstrated that I was right to be very cautious, because what has been happening is that our laboratories have been moved to the School of Biosciences. We were very sad about the closure of our department. We were aware that the integrity of the discipline had been destroyed in the university, but yet we wanted to be resilient. We thought, okay, we can also do good work within biosciences. But the question is that the message that has come from the other side has only been a message of destruction, okay? And basically, constant harassment in many different ways. You mentioned some of the issues, but now the most obvious one is that our laboratory and collection that we have built up with immense amount of work and love, okay, which is important for the community, is important for the city, is basically going to be destroyed. I have no other words for that, because the key emphasis we put is that this was a resource that had to be accessible to the public. Okay, so we put a lot of emphasis not on completion, but on layout, on the fact that it would be user-friendly, that the students and people from the external world could use it. Now we are going to be dumped in a place which is totally unsuitable. We have raised a number of very important concerns about the new location, and we have received absolutely no response. And I can say something. Sorry, just to say, and then also the other thing, obviously our technician in charge is going to be made redundant. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
No. I'd just like to clarify for our audience who may not be completely across all the details of this. What reason is the university giving for moving the Zooarchaeology lab and the reference collection?
That's a very interesting question. We don't know. We have asked, and we have never received an answer, which is absolutely typical. All that is happening in a complete vacuum. We are provided no information. We are not consulted. We have not been part of any of the discussion about what is going to be done. So we don't know why we are going to move. We had been offered a different location before, and then that possibility, which seemed to be a much better suited location, that possibility was ruled out. And again, we don't know why. They don't regard us as worthy of being provided with any information.
And again, for our audience's benefit, I should perhaps point out that the immediate context for this, as far as the university is concerned, is that they're facing back in November last year, 2024, they announced they were facing a shortfall in their finances of something like £50 million. And the Vice Chancellor, Cohen Lamberts, under whose period in office all of this has actually happened, said that the university would have to cut its staffing costs by 9 million this year and I think 14 million next year. So it's pretty drastic pruning that the university has admitted that it's going to have to indulge in. And obviously, I think across the whole university, the UCU, University College Union branch, you've been taking industrial action, I believe, isn't that right, Umberto?
Yes, yes, we did. Our union considers that the university claim is totally baseless. First of all, bear in mind that this is a decline in profit. Okay, that the universities make. They don't call it profit; they call it surplus, but it's the same thing. And that the university can easily absorb in other ways, as the union has amply demonstrated. So they don't have really a good reason to generate these redundancies. Clearly, there are other ulterior motives to do so. We did go on strike on that. The strike has been called off because union members have decided to accept a deal in which basically the redundancies are going to be delayed. This is all we have achieved. But I think there is a general feeling that this is very much not at the end in terms of industrial action. This is going to continue. I think the university also has regained, even if we had to buy the rather fanciful financial story, they have regained most of the money they wanted to regain through a voluntary severance scheme. So,
right, and I think I should bring in Stephanie at this point, because this is, in a sense, this is a story we're seeing across UK higher education at the moment. We're seeing cuts. The headlines are often the cuts in academic posts, but often underneath those are cuts in what are sometimes sort of just called support staff. It's a sort of general blanket title, and I think often for people who aren't familiar with the way departments work, and particularly certain subject areas where there are laboratories where equipment needs to be supported, reference collections need to be maintained, administered, and so on. Some people maybe aren't quite as familiar as they should be with what support workers in a university academic context actually do. So before we sort of get on to what's actually happening now, Stephanie, can you just explain just a little bit about what you do, what your function is within zooarchaeology and bioarchaeology?
So I'm responsible for maintaining, expanding, and just sort of keeping organised the collections. But a lot of my time is spent helping students, and they're not necessarily just zooarchaeology students. They're, any student who needs help on the ground. They can come to us, me and Ben and Andres, my co-workers. We're there on the ground when the students are doing practical stuff. We're there to make sure they're safe. We're there to make sure they've got everything they need. We're there to answer questions. If we can't help them, we point them to the right academics. And this is part of the reason why what's happening in the universities is so concerning to me, because students are being asked year on year to pay more, and increasingly what they're getting offered is less. And I worry for the future safety of students. I worry for their employability, because I'm at the beginning in many ways of my career, and this type of role is a way to be able to follow your passion in your field. And if you have a passion for, animal bones in my case, but whatever, being on the ground and getting to work within a university is a fantastic experience. But increasingly these roles are disappearing And what's happening is that people like me with years of experience, I've got a master's, there are people with PhDs in the same position. We're now flooding a job market that should be available for students who are finishing their careers. So we do a lot of student support stuff, and that is something that while I am fighting for myself, I am fighting for them as well. Like, they deserve better. They deserve, for £10,000 a year, they deserve support. They deserve help. They don't deserve to just be told, sort yourselves out. And with our collection, if I'm not there upkeeping it, things will get put back in the wrong place. Things will get damaged. IDs, like skeletal IDs, might become less reliable because what you're using to compare your archaeological assemblage with might not be a collection that's kept in order, because our staff, they simply don't have the time to do it themselves. That's why I'm here.
And again, thank you for joining us at what must be a very difficult and emotionally very difficult time. I mean, obviously, what you're describing there, and what's described in the Facebook post, the fact that the whole technical support team is being made redundant, it implies some sort of restructuring. But how does the university envisage your functions being carried forward when you're not there?
I'm not really clear on that. We've been told that if teaching comes back, then pre-existing teaching support, so sort of teaching technicians, so teaching equivalent of me that already exist in bioscience, they'll cover the helping the students part, the helping with demonstrations and lectures. But I don't actually think they care about the maintenance of the collections. I think I get the impression that they think that either they think that it will just maintain itself, or they just don't really care. Like, they've got cuts to make, and we're what's getting cut. And I know that, and I know that there are a lot of other people who are technicians as well, who either have been laid off by the university or are going to be laid off or have had their hours reduced. So it's not just an archaeology thing, it's technicians. So yeah.
I noticed it's something I wasn't aware of until I actually started doing the prep for this particular conversation, but I hadn't realized that the animal reference collection is actually named for Professor Tony Legg, late Professor Tony Legg, which I think I'm right in saying it's listed as. Is that right?
Yes, our laboratory was named after him because Tony, who unfortunately died a few years ago,
yes,
and he donated his collection to us. So that was the moment. He was an eminent zooarchaeologist.
Yeah. And the reason I mention it is actually in the latter part of his career, he taught at Birkbeck College, University of London, where I actually did my master's, and he taught the zooarchaeology component of that. So, but the reason I'm raising that is not to sort of blow any kind of trumpet for myself. It's to acknowledge, obviously, someone who was a great scholar in the field, but also the fact that what is actually being potentially damaged here is actually decades of experience and knowledge and collecting. How do you respond to that thought?
You're absolutely right, Andy. I mean, that's the point we've made many times. I mean, the zooarchaeology collection in Sheffield, first it was started well before my time, because I've been in Sheffield 21 years. But also when I arrived, we put this very strong focus on community use. But absolutely, decades of expertise, decades of dedication, a huge international reputation. I mean, the university management doesn't seem to care about this, and then you have to wonder whether it's possible, it's conceivable that anybody is so incompetent not to realize that. if that is impossible to conceive, then you will have to conclude that their target is the university itself. Because I mean, for you it was obvious. It was so, as an external person to the university, it was totally obvious that this was something extremely valuable for our university, its reputation.
And one thing we do know that the university takes a great deal of notice of is student numbers, and particularly high-paying students like postgrads. Yet I think I'm right in saying there was something like a 7% drop in overall student numbers at Sheffield in the current academic year, which takes it below 30,000, which it was. I think it was just above 30,000 previously. I mean, in your area, are you seeing a drop in numbers, a drop in inquiries, drop in applications, particularly given the when we first talked about the situation with archaeology at Sheffield, one of the concerns was that by removing an identifiable department, it will make it more difficult to actually, to use that horrible term, market the university as a destination for students at all levels, whether it was at that point still undergrad, but now obviously just postgrads. But is this causing complications for you in that regard as well?
That's a good understatement to say it's causing us complication. I mean, archaeology teaching as an independent teaching discipline has been completely destroyed in this university for a number of reasons. Of course, the discipline is not there anymore because we are just divided between biosciences and history, and also because of the massive reputational damage over the last few years. So we had to interrupt basically all the courses that we were teaching. And initially we were told we were given a period of grace to rebuild. And I think for me, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the zooarchaeology, the only way to rebuild would be to work very closely with the colleagues in biosciences, doing courses on things that I'm also very keen on, associated how archaeology can help in addressing issues of biodiversity, climate change, and all this, all things that would have been in any way very interesting, but they are not allowing us to do it because first they haven't given us time, and our student numbers obviously have completely collapsed. First we were no longer allowed to teach undergraduates, and then of course all the postgraduate courses had to be largely cancelled. Only one course has been left, which obviously is not recruiting well in the current context. But I think there would be the opportunity to reinvent ourselves with much stronger integration, but we would need a little bit of time to do that. But they're not giving us time. So initially they said, okay, you have time to rebuild. And now they're saying, one of the justifications for getting rid of staff's job, and you will have to laugh at this, is because we don't have enough students. I mean, they have absolutely destroyed our student cohort. And just to add one other element, I have to say that I have had many inquiries from students who wanted to do the masters, who just say that we are not going to go to Sheffield because we are not going to give our money to these people. Very sad, but true.
It sounds very bleak. I mean, and there's another area I just want to address with you both. Perhaps maybe Stephanie can start. But certainly the university was very publicly proud of its record in terms of doing being involved in highly visible quotes community projects, including in the centre of the city, and yet that appears to be really just lip service. And you talk in the in the Facebook post about the, for example, the fact that the short courses, which were very popular on a community basis, introducing people to archaeology, bringing people back into, back into education potentially. I mean, people like me, whose route back into archaeology was actually via adult education and short courses. Ended up doing a master's, and I'm here now. So you've been. How has that impacted on your work?
It's hard to understate how much of an impact everything that's been going on has had on our work. I'm persevering, like I'm still prepping skeletons, still working with students as much as we can, but with so much uncertainty, it's so difficult to attract students, to make plans, to attract researchers, because if someone says, can I come in September, I can't even tell them where we'll be. Or the last year, I haven't been able to tell them where to be. And, we get emails every week from people saying, are you doing short courses? I thought you were doing a short course. And every week we have to say, no, we're not. And it shows the interest is there. But yeah, our work is just, it's difficult. It's very difficult. Because it all feels at times a little bit pointless. We're working on organising this collection, making it usable, opening it up to people, but it's hard to continue investing in that when are people going to be able to access it without someone there to let them into the building? Because without me, there will be one remaining technician, but it's only they're only there for 2 days a week, and they're covering every other technician's roles essentially. So it is difficult. We persevere, but it's difficult.
Andy, every day we go to work, the feeling is that we are going to war. I mean, the amount of obstruction that we get constantly. I mean, we have known each other now for a few years, and you know that I'm an extremely passionate person. I have great passion for the things I believe in. I get great passion for my work, and I still do. But it is so hard to work in a context that is constantly trying to undermine whatever you do. And the more it's community oriented, the more it's student oriented, the more it's sympathetic towards your colleagues, the more they will obstruct you. It's just unbelievable. I mean, the story of the short courses is verging of ridiculous. We have brought more than 700 people from all over the world to attend our short courses. They have been a complete success in many different ways, not only in terms of community engagement, but of course you can imagine fantastic experience for our team, fantastic teaching experience for our PhD students. We have made so many, we have generated so many collaborations, networks, and so on. And also we were funding our lab on that basis, despite we were keen on keeping the course very competitive and very inclusive, accessible, but we still would get enough money to keep going. But management is not interested in that. He said, one thing they said, if you were making hundreds of thousands of money or pounds, we would be interested, but we're not interested in a few thousands. What kind of university have we created?
Yes.
I'm one of the people who's benefited from these short courses, so I know just how valuable they are. I've had an experience to teach which I would never have had, as have other students. It's given people opportunities, not just the people doing the course, but the people hosting the course. And it's another thing that we've stripped from our students, is another opportunity that they don't get now. It's an opportunity to make themselves more employable. And once again, it's gone.
And I think everybody watching this will hear the the passion and the commitment in both your voices in talking about this. I mean, since the Facebook posts came out, it's been shared around a lot of the archaeological social media. Certainly, I've seen it on a number of Facebook groups and so on. What kind of reception, what kind of response have you had from the rest of our sector?
Again, a huge amount of solidarity, but obviously one of the problems is that people are becoming a little bit jaded about this, because the Sheffield story has been going on for a few years, and people just can't believe that what is happening. This is what the university management doesn't seem to understand, that all over the world, people are in total disbelief that a research group, and which is so widely admired and regarded as a bit of a model, to be honest with you. I'm not trying, I don't even try to be modest here. This has been the case, is being destroyed. And then people say there is really something substantially wrong, both with the University of Sheffield and with the system we have created. So there is a huge amount of solidarity, but now people are thinking, what are we really going to do? It's the context that seems to be rather hopeless.
It's hard to blame them as well, because it feels hopeless for us.
Mm.
I mean, one of the things that struck me as well was when we were preparing for this chat. It was we very much wanted to have more than one voice on this package to represent different aspects of the story, and it was said that actually some people might actually even be afraid to come on and talk because of the atmosphere within the university, and the fear that they might actually face some kind of consequence if they did speak out. And obviously, Umberto, you've never been afraid to speak out, and we're very grateful that you have. And obviously, Stephanie, I guess you're facing a situation now where you may be parting company, and you want to get your you feel the need to have your say. But do you find that disturbing?
Yeah, but I'm also very much in the position of what have I got to lose? So I came to Sheffield Uni in 2011. I came back to do my master's. I volunteered here. I've worked with English Heritage on behalf of the university. I've invested my entire career into this university. So what have I got to lose by speaking out? Like, I've lost everything, more or less. If I lose this job, I have to start again. So I don't really have anything to lose. At the moment, I'm not being offered a redundancy money. So if I don't take severance, I get nothing. So I'm in no worse a position as far as I consider it. And in fact, if the last thing I do at this university is fight for our students, for our lab, then if that blows back on me, then I've got no regrets. I believe in this. I believe in this lab. I used to believe in this university, and I think I can again. But if I don't say anything, then I'm just going along with it, and I can't do that. So I'm willing to take the risk.
Okay.
The other thing, and I think maybe I don't think again anybody listening to what you've just said can't help but be moved and impressed by your commitment. It's there in your voice. The final question I think I want to put to you both as we wind up this particular conversation is it seems to be a very lonely situation, and this is something I'd say about other people in other departments that we've talked to about similar situations. We talked to Flint Dibble recently about the situation in Cardiff, and these things seem to be happening that affect the sector, the archaeological sector, the heritage sector nationally, but it's in a sense these decisions aren't being made nationally; they're being made locally by individuals in university senior management teams, and there seems to be very little attempts to pull together the consequences for the sector as a whole. The fact that if there's not a pipeline of students coming through courses like yours, gaining expertise like you're able to impart to them, then that has an impact down the line in terms of the ability of the sector to do proper post-ex on development archaeology, which is one of the main reasons the sector says it exists these days. Do you feel you've been cut adrift by the wider representatives of the sector, University Archaeology UK, Council of British Archaeology, Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, Federation of Archaeological Managers and Employers, all of whom benefit from the students that you put through your courses?
Yeah. Okay. I would like to link just a second your question to the question you asked before. First, just one quick clarification regarding the risk. I have already been threatened with disciplinary action because of that Facebook post. Okay. Yeah. I'm completely unfazed by that. They can go ahead and do whatever they want. One of the reasons why I mentioned that is because I think that what is emerging here is a clear pattern where people expect always that the initiative must come from elsewhere. Okay, I waited for that. Okay, I think if there is one iconic figure of the 21st century, is Greta Thunberg, who has shown us the power of the individual. Okay, it's basically you just go and do the thing that you think is right. Okay, whether you can win or lose, it doesn't really matter. You have to defend what is right. And that is the context that we see within the university, and using your word also within the archaeology sector too. Basically, people just follow orders or follow trends, okay, rather than say, okay, wait a minute, okay, the responsibility here is mine. Okay, so this is why, and I think we have had on this program and this conversation before, I do strongly believe that we should have a much more connected grassroots movement of archaeologists across the country, and in fact even internationally, that is prepared to respond to these threats. Regarding our formal organizations, obviously I'm always happy if they are prepared to do something to help. But my experience of many years is that they are too entrenched within a kind of corporate establishment to really be of much use. And we have seen it that when we were fighting our fight to defend our department, we had an absolutely enormous amount of solidarity from individuals, learned society, colleagues, universities, but very little solidarity from the kind of organizations you mentioned. Okay, maybe the most we could hope for is that they would say that they were very sad about what was happening. We have to create parallel systems. It's a little bit like, if you really wanted to make serious social change, don't rely on your political parties, but actually rely on real great mass movements, that start from the base.
Last question, and following on directly from that, and I'll ask both of you, if we're going to go down the Greta Thunberg route, what, and I'll ask maybe Stephanie first and then Umberto just to wind up, but what would you ask people who are watching this conversation, what would you ask them to do?
It's a really good question. And I'm not quite sure how to answer it, because we're living in a world where even people outside of our sort of our lab and our what's left of archaeology, when they raise their voices, it's not listened to. So I'm Umberto's probably got more ideas than I have. Come to our lab, use it while you still can. If you want to come, email us. You can come and look at the skeletons. Do it while you can. But yeah, that's the main thing I can think to suggest is like, come and use it. It's open to everyone. It will be open to everyone for as long as I'm here. I will make sure you can come and look at the skeletons. So that's what I would suggest. Come and see us.
Use it or lose it is the phrase.
Use it or lose it. Yeah.
I think what I would like people to do is talk about it, shout about it. Just make sure that everybody knows this is exactly what irritates the management to no end, okay? Because they want to keep the thing, rather secret, secretive, And I think it's absolutely important that everybody knows that a scandal really is currently in place in our university. And I think it's important that the people go beyond, understand that this is just a small piece of a much wider world in which the threat is towards culture, is towards education, is towards our freedom. It's just so talk about it, make sure that people know about it and respond to that, because this is exactly what they don't want. Silence kills, okay, and any form of silence is killing our activities, and also I think it's still important to do it, because one message I'm going to send, not to you, not to the community, but to our managers, is that if you expect that we are going to give up, forget about that, okay? We will fight to the end, okay? And we will make sure that people know that something not quite right is happening in our institution, and we want to do all the best that we can to save our lab, but to save our activities, but because we want to help our community, and we want to help our university, and we want to help our city and our country, if you like, okay, and in general, culture worldwide. So we are never ever going to give up, even if they destroy our lab, destroy our collection, sack us, whatever they can do. Our fight is going to go to the end.
I think that is probably a peroration to end on. Thank you very much for breaking your silence in this conversation. Stephanie Barron, Professor Umberto Arborella, thank you very much for talking to the Watching Brief.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks very much for having us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It doesn't get much more serious than that, I think. That was a fairly impactful insight into what's happening at Sheffield. And I suppose the impact being one of administrative decisions and moving people around in a way that doesn't necessarily fully take account of their lived experience of these changes. Now, of course, we're hearing about this sort of stuff increasingly. Actually, earlier today, I shared with you on a back and forth in preparation for this recording, news of colleagues, for example, at Newcastle University, who are anxious and concerned about their positions. But this instance seems to be particularly unfortunate, I suppose. Do we know anything about how the university actually feels about what's unfolded?
That, I think, is one of the issues that we're facing. Really, we don't. The the university is making decisions. It's making decisions known to staff. But as we heard from Umberto and Steph, the staff aren't always fully in the picture. They're certainly not fully in the. They're certainly not put fully in the picture before the decisions are made. They allege, and this is a situation that we've seen developing at Sheffield for years now, ever since the closure of the archaeology department as was first proposed. I have to say, I mean, that is, I think you talked about impactful. I mean, that's one of the most powerful interviews I think I've done for the Watching Brief. I came out of that, I think, with I hope our audience recognizes, and wherever you stand on the issue of university funding, sympathizes with the people who, through no fault of their own, are doing their best to do a job while caught up in these really emotionally intense situations. And as you said, you know, Sheffield is just one case. This is happening all over the UK at the moment.
Yeah, no, it is. And in that sense, actually, as we discussed in an earlier episode covering Sheffield, Sheffield really was a bit of a canary down the coal mine in terms of the direction of travel. So obviously you reached out to Sheffield for comment. Have we had any comment?
Well, we have and we haven't. Obviously, there were some very serious allegations, as we described in the package. What got us started on this particular part of the story was a post on Facebook about 10 days ago now, which made a number of allegations about the way the Zooarchaeology lab and its staff were being treated. So yesterday, after we'd recorded the interview, I reached out to the University of Sheffield, to the media team at the University of Sheffield, and I explained that we were about to publish our story. I listed the principal allegations that are listed in the Facebook post, and because they were basically the core of the interview. If you look at the Facebook post and then look at the interview, you'll see that we addressed pretty much all of those issues. And then I added a couple of questions at the end, for example, about the frustrations and concerns that we heard expressed about how the university had handled this, and the concerns about the fate of the what's effectively an internationally important resource. The reference collections at Sheffield are certainly nationally and possibly internationally important. Certainly the scholarship there is international. Umberto being a case in point. You know, he's been working in the UK for a long time, but obviously he's an Italian. Shows the international nature of what Sheffield has done in the past and the reputation it had. So we asked about that, and we gave them a full working day to reply, which we felt was reasonable. We were responded to be fair to them, very quickly, by a woman signing herself off as Shamina, from the media team. What she said was, and I'll quote from the email. "Thank you for your email. Your inquiry is detailed and includes various assertions that need fact checking before it will be accurate to publish anything. We need a lot longer than a few hours to do it. We would appreciate it if you could please hold off on any publication until we can look into this further." With the email only arriving at 1 a.m. on Friday, I did send it late last night because I wanted to give them a full working day, and I'd actually been watching Charlton qualify for the League One playoffs at Wembley last night.
Oh, so I see. Okay.
I was working a little bit later than I would do normally. But the email only arriving at 1 a.m. on a Friday ahead of a weekend when we will be unable to get hold of the correct staff. Please can you hold off at least till at least close of play Wednesday next week to allow us time to look into this. We look forward to hearing from you. Now, it turns out that the Shamina we were talking to is in fact Shamina Davis, who is their senior media relations manager.
Right. Yeah.
So basically, one of their head honchos in their PR department. I think that shows, to be fair to them, that they were taking it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I responded to that straight away, and I said, thank you for responding so promptly and engaging with these issues. The Facebook post which prompted our interest was published 10 days ago on the 5th of May, and we understand from our sources that there has already been some pushback from the university against staff in the Zooarchaeology lab because of it. So it's highly likely the university does have a position on this. Right? And I then went on to say, meanwhile, the university did not issue a denial as to the substance when the post in question received a lot of traffic on archaeological social media. That's also the case. We couldn't find any record of any comment from Sheffield basically saying this is not accurate. And then we added that some of the criticism reflected long-standing issues which staff had expressed through the University College Union during previous disputes with management, including the most recent dispute. Again, the university has expressed positions on matters such as accountability and consultation with staff, etc. previously, and the financial background to the university's restructuring of various departments and schools are well known, and indeed we refer to them in the piece. Again, we do. We talked about the deficit that Sheffield states that it's trying to deal with. Sheffield senior management state they're trying to deal with. And then we said, finally, the matter of redundancies among support staff should be a matter of record in your HR department. Sources have told us that staff concerned are already under notice, and changes at the Zooarchaeology lab, including preparations for a move to a new and sources allege unsuitable building, are already underway. As a consequence, we felt that a full working day was a reasonable period of time to obtain a reaction. Now, again, trying to be fair, we said, therefore, we do not feel able to hold up our own publication schedule. In publication weeks, Watching Brief normally goes out on a Friday ahead of the weekend. However, we are conscious of the requirement to be fair and offer a right of reply to the university. And if you wish to issue a holding statement, we can include that in today's show, and we will make clear the university has requested more time to answer the questions raised. We will then, of course, carry any more detailed statement you are able to offer us as soon as practical and with due prominence. I hope that provides a way forward, and we and our audience appreciate your engaging with the matter. So I think, we think we're fair in publishing this with the caveats that we've put in place. We've tried to seek comment. Now, in response to that particular email and the offer of a holding statement and the offer of of publishing a more detailed statement if they give us one later, I think the response could be described at best as terse. It's one line and it says, "Thanks, Andy. We'll get back to you if we have something to add."
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's not unreasonable to say, frankly, even sometimes with half a day's notice, can you comment on this? If we were a large news organization like the BBC or a newspaper, they often say, right, we're going to press, or we're going to air at this time. We need your comment if you're going to give us one by this time. And given that we're a wee little pair of people doing our best, actually, I think we, in that sense, working pretty damned hard and well. Arguably, it should be less stressful to provide a short turnaround to essentially an industry vlog than it should be to a large news organization who presumably they would have a comment for. Or at the very least, they'd say, we have no comment. Whereas, I don't know. Brilliant that they responded. Much better than some organisations that we've been dealing with recently. But
naming no names, yes.
Yeah, naming no names. CBA. It's a shame that they sort of, in that sense, seemingly were playing for time. Yeah. But
I mean,
we'll see what happens. If another comment comes forward, obviously we'll report it. Obviously,
absolutely. And I think all I would say just to finish is, obviously, people watching this, if you think the issues that we've raised in this particular episode of the Watching Brief, and particularly that Umberto Arborella and Stephanie Barron raised, because it was actually, this interview was about them and about their work and about how they see their work as being under threat. We're just putting that out there.
Well, also, frankly, it was also about how transparent their employers are.
That's a side issue, and I think
it's not a side. It's part of the issue, isn't it?
It is. I think, to be fair to Sheffield, they're behaving perhaps more visibly, but no differently to the way that many other managements behave.
No, exactly.
And in fact, we know that, for example, there's another department where staff are currently under threat, where they feel unable to talk about it.
Yes.
In the way that Umberto has just talked to us.
Yeah.
So, it's in a sense, and I'd finish here really. We set up the Watching Brief. I set up the pipeline to enable archaeologists to have conversations about things that the archaeological media have found it difficult to have conversations about, to give a voice to people who aren't always given a voice, because independent voices are frowned upon in certain quarters in our sector. And I think, if there's ever been a justification for what we do, it's stories like Sheffield. And I would just say to anybody out there, if you think that kind of thing is important, please, like, subscribe, share today's story. And if you have information about what you heard about in today's show, or about another situation that is similar that you would like us to tell us about, please reach out so that we can give you and your concerns that voice, or we can help you speak out to the rest of the sector, to the rest of the people who care about archaeology out there in the vlog sphere, on the net, that wider community, that wider support network of people who care about archaeology and archaeologists. Because in the end, that's the value, I think, of doing the kind of thing that people have just watched. And but we rely on people coming to us, trusting us, to be able to tell those stories.
Yeah. Well, obviously we'll keep on covering this. We'll keep you guys at home up to date on developments. And all that remains to say is to like, share, discuss, and, as Umberto says, talk about it, shout about it. It's, if nothing else. And I was saying this to the guys after we finished recording the interview, because I was sort of in the background listening to it and capturing it. I was saying that actually, if nothing else, we've learned over the past few years that being quiet, being demure in these scenarios doesn't help. It just allows the larger party, the institution, to have breathing space for its own desires, its own plans, as opposed to having to actually think about what it's doing. So definitely get in touch if you feel as though you can or that you need to. Until next time, guys, do take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.